Today we are starting to talk about genetics and how this relates to meiosis and how we started getting individuals that don't look exactly like their parents and why are we getting those combinations. Our father of genetics is Gregor Mendel. Hopefully you've heard his name before, or some of you are researching him for your scientist project. He discovered how traits are inherited. This was before we even knew what the structure of DNA was. He used pea plants to do this, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. The two words on this slide that you need to know are genetics, which is the study of heredity, and heredity, which is the passing of traits from parents to offspring. Hopefully you've heard both of those words before. Okay, so Mendel's pea plants. Notice in the picture over here that each of these different traits, like seed shape, flower color, pod color, we have two different ways that they could look. We have two different traits. We have a round and a wrinkled, purple and white, yellow and green. And so he wanted to figure out why. Plants can either be self-fertilized or they can be cross-fertilized. Self-fertilized, I hope that's self-explanatory. They're fertilized with themselves. And cross-fertilized, it's with another plant. True breeding plants they create plants that always look like themselves. So we take a tall and we cross it with a tall and we get a true breeding plant. It crosses with itself. Versus hybrids, when we have offspring of true breeding plants. So we take a tall true breeding and we take a short true breeding and we create a hybrid. At that point you are unsure of what trait will come out. This one is obviously going to be tall. Okay, so don't write this down. I just wanted to see, did the colors of the two flowers blend? And no, they did not. In this picture that we have a purple crossed with a white, and we end up with a purple. And we want to know why. Why didn't they just blend? Why did the purple one seem to have overpowered the white one? If we take that purple plant, that offspring, and we self-fertilize it, so we fertilize it with itself, we get 3 purples and 1 white. Where did that white come from? The white wasn't up here, so where did it come from? This is what he wanted to know. Okay, so Mendel created 3 laws: the law of dominance and recessiveness, the law of segregation, and the law of independent assortment. We're going to skip law of independent assortment. You'll learn about that in high school. We'll focus on the first 2. Okay, so the law of dominance is literally one trait dominates the other. So if you inherit 2 dominant alleles, the dominant allele will show. Most likely if you have brown eyes or black hair, those overpower blue eyes and blonde hair. So you either have the 2 dominant traits to get that black hair or those brown eyes. You could also have 1 recessive and 1 dominant. So say this is brown hair, the dominant, and this is blonde hair, the recessive. The dominant one's going to show. It's going to overpower it completely. You could end up with 2 recessive alleles. If you have blue eyes, that means you have 2 recessive alleles. You don't have the brown one to overpower the blue one. Okay, so alleles are, remember we talked about genes and how they're just little segments of the DNA that tell your body to create a certain trait, whether you have the shape of your mouth, your eye color, your hair color, your shape of your nose, your height. All of that each of those is determined by a gene. Not necessarily one, but for right now we're going to simplify it and say 1 gene. The 2 different forms of the gene, you get 1 from mom and 1 from dad. Those are your alleles. So notice in this picture, this is 1 segment of DNA. This is 1 chromosome. And right here, this is the allele for the purple flower. So this is a gene. This is a short segment of DNA that will get the purple flowers. On this one, it's a short segment of DNA. It's the other allele that could give you the white flowers. So you have 2 different types. They're at the same location on the same chromosome, but they're different. We have a purple one and we have a white one. So the alleles can either be dominant or they can be recessive. You saw in the last one that when we put a purple and a white together, that we got a purple. So that purple one is overpowering the white one. Okay, so alleles are represented by letters we either put them with two capitals for dominant, dominant, a capital and lowercase for dominant and recessive, or lowercase, lowercase for recessive, recessive, which is what this shows as well. If you have a dominant, if you have a capital in there anywhere, that is the one that's going to show. So if I mix these two individuals and I get a capital A and a lowercase a, I will get the capital A, I will get brown eyes. If the recessive is there, it will be overpowered by the dominant unless you have two of the lowercase. It looks like this. Okay, so an example of that, say that the capital T represents straight hair and lowercase t represents curly hair. I could have picked any letter to represent these, I just decided to pick T. So if we have capital T, we get straight hair. Straight hair is the dominant one. If you have a capital in there, you get the dominant trait. So the important thing in these is that you are keeping track of which one's the dominant one, which one's the recessive. So our recessive one, curly hair, the only way we can get an offspring with curly hair is if we have two lowercase t's. If we have the hybrid, the capital T, lowercase t, then we will get an individual with straight hair because it overpowers the curly hair one. Okay, so these are 4 vocab words that are in your vocab list. Genotype and phenotype, these are very easily confused. The genotype is specifically talking about the DNA, so it's talking about those letters that we use to represent the alleles. The phenotype is what it looks like. So think about what you'll see in a photo. Phenotype, photo. It's what it looks like. So if I ask you what the genotype is, I should see letters. If I ask you what the phenotype is, I should see a description, some type of color or height or shape. Okay, homozygous is the alleles are the same. Heterozygous, the alleles are different. In homozygous, you can have homozygous dominant, so you can have capital A, or you can have homozygous recessive, which is capital or lowercase b, lowercase b. The heterozygous will always have two different, so you'll have one capital and one lowercase. Alright, so let's practice this. The alleles to become a wizard. I know, Harry Potter, you guys love it. So the phenotypes, what they will look like is they have the wizarding ability, is the lowercase m, so that's our genotype. And no wizarding ability is capital M. So no wizarding ability to be a muggle is dominant. So what genotype would you need to have to be a wizard? Think about it. And the only way that you can become a wizard is if you have the lowercase, because if that capital M is there, it will overpower it and you'll be a muggle. So what genotypes would you need to be a muggle? Think about it. You have two options. You could have capital M, or capital M, lowercase m. That lowercase m is there, and that's what we need to have wizarding ability, but this one overpowers it completely. Okay, so which of these are heterozygous? Meaning two different. We only have one, capital M, lowercase m. Which of them are homozygous? So they're the same. Capital M, or capital M, that is incorrect. That should say lowercase m. Sorry, scratch that. Lowercase m. Which ones are recessive? The lowercase m. And which one is dominant? Sorry, that keeps popping up. The capital M. Okay, so in Mendel's laws, the second one is the law of segregation. Two alleles for a trait separate during gamete formation. So this is going to lead us into punnett squares. Punnett squares are used to figure out the probability. So we're trying to figure out the chance that you will get an offspring with some certain trait. So I have your probability, the chance that a given event will occur. So we have a question. What is the chance that I'm going to get individuals with brown hair? I'm going to use a punnett square to be able to figure that out. This shows the gene combinations from a genetic cross. So we take this individual who is heterozygous, meaning two different alleles. They have the dominant and the recessive, and we cross it with another person who is heterozygous, dominant and recessive. And the boxes will tell us what are the chances of getting the certain traits. Okay, so we put on our Punnett squares, we put our parents on the outside. This is parent number 1. This is parent number 2. Mama bear, Papa bear. It doesn't matter which parent you put on each side as long as you keep the letters together. Notice I have a capital A and a lowercase, and I keep that on one side of it, put it on the top. And then my second one, I have a capital and a lowercase, and I put it on the side. My offspring are in here. And this just shows you that if you have your A, your capital A right here, this is for Mama bear or Papa bear, it doesn't matter, that we're going to bring that straight down, and the one that's on the left side is going to be brought straight over into that box. So we'll get a capital A, capital A. This lowercase a is going to be brought down, and this capital A is going to be brought over in this box to create a heterozygous individual. Always put the capital one first. We're going to do the same thing over here. This capital A is going to go down here. This capital A is going to come over here, and we're going to end up with an individual with capital A, and lowercase brought down into the last box, and capital brought over into this box, and we'll have a heterozygous individual. Okay, so this is just showing you, remember when we had those 4 cells at the end of meiosis? Well, think about that, and we have 4 individuals showing our generation. Also, right here we have 4 individuals. So, always in our Punnett squares we're going to have 4. Lastly, before I get to these Punnett squares, we are going to practice these in class quite extensively. I'm pretty sure you'll be experts at it. Some of you already know how to do it, I noticed from our pretest, but you will get a refresher. Okay, so everything that we just talked about was Mendelian genetics. So it was named after Mendel and what he did, and his are almost too simplistic, and a lot of traits, especially in humans, are not as simple as we would like them to be. And so there are other forms of genetics, and they are called beyond Mendelian genetics, non-Mendelian genetics. So one of those that we're going to talk about is multiple alleles. This happens when the genes have more than 2 types. So up until now, we've only had a uppercase and a lowercase. We've had a dominant and a recessive. Like I said, humans aren't so simple. Blood types is one that we're going to talk about in class, and you can see in this picture that we have multiple alleles. There are 4 different things that we could, 4 different traits that we could display. You could have A blood type, you could have B blood type, you could have AB blood type, and you could have O. I don't want to get into this too much here, just get down that what multiple alleles is and that blood types is an example, and we will talk more about this in class together. Also, another example is fur color in rabbits that you could get. Instead of just getting a dominant and a recessive, they have 4 different alleles that they could show. They could have the white, they could have the white with the black and black feet and ears, and then this gray color, and then also this brown color. So in certain animals, not everything in genetics is as simple as having 2 traits, unfortunately. In humans, most of our traits are not just 2. There's a lot more involved in it. So don't let yourself get confused on that. We're going to talk more about that later. We're going to practice those Punnett squares, and make sure that you are getting that vocab, especially these words right here are going to be used extensively in class. See you in class.